co-creating a world filled with positive possibilities while leading by example, My Power of One takes a stand for kindness. In The Wizard of One, Sue Vicory is joined by new guests in each episode to share inspiring stories and challenge the listener to continue transforming humanity one word and one act of kindness at a time. Be sure to stop by mypowerofone.com and join the movement at mypowerofone on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Hello to everybody. Welcome to The Wizard of One, a magical journey of kindness. We are brought to you by My Power of One. My name is Sue Vicory, and today I'm in the studio with Tony Garcia. Let's see. I wanted to tell you about why I asked you to be on the podcast to begin with, Tony. We have not met in person. We've got a lot of sort of connectivity and things in common. And I think mostly the spirit of who you are, the heartbeat by which you operate in your life is what attracted me and attracted us to each other. And you were really probably my second ask to be on the podcast. Last month we did Stephanie Tillman, who I've known for, 15, 16, 17 years, and the brand My Power of One exists because of her. So today, and in your honor, by the way, I am wearing respect.
Nice.
And as I looked at my vast My Power of One wardrobe this morning, I'm like, what word should I, and I see you've got something on, I'm like, what word represents how I feel about Tony? And this is the word that I chose. So I have a lot of respect for you from what, I've seen that how you project yourself in the world. Obviously, your words of inspiration. And Tony Garcia is our guest as I'm rambling on here. And what I want to tell you about Tony before we get started is that, first and foremost, you're a father of 4. And that is no small task. I grew up in a family with 4 siblings, and that is a buttload of work for the mom and the dad. And so I understand that raising 4 children is, you're a hero to begin with just to do that. I see you're wearing Superman today. In addition to that, you're an educator. So you taught in junior high, I'm assuming, is it junior high?
It was junior high when I started, and then went to middle school.
Okay, right.
So I ended my career at the middle school level.
Yeah, 30 years as an educator with such a important age bracket of kids, and we can talk about that in a minute. You're also the author of, that was my notifications that just went off. You're an author of 3 books now. I'm assuming you're probably working on another one, but you've authored and have on Amazon.com 3 inspirational books. You have, in my interpretation, a large following of people who love and adore you. That's how I would look at it, and obviously I consider myself one of those. But I hold a lot of respect for you, and in that we have not met in person, I find that absolutely fascinating. That you can create a relationship with somebody virtually in today's world, and your hearts can kind of beat at the same pattern, and just know that person is in alignment with you. So I'd like to start a little bit. You're from Chicago, it's my hometown, and I'd like to start a little bit about you telling us about your years of growing up maybe in the city, and tell us a little bit about your family as a child and what you gravitated towards in a large metropolitan area like Chicago.
Well, the memories of Chicago are my mom, God rest her soul. She teased me that my memory isn't what it once was, because I used to tease her about some of the things I did as a child, and she was like, that never happened. And so we moved a lot. My father was military, and so My older sister was born in Chicago. I was born in Chicago, but then my younger brother was born in Michigan only a couple years after I was born. My other brother, my youngest brother, was born in Germany a couple years after that. And then a few years later, my sister was born in Indianapolis. And so we really moved a lot during my childhood. I can't even keep track of addresses and how many states we lived in while my dad was in the military. None of his stays were very long. I think the maximum we ever lived in any one area was 3 years. And so we were always on the move from, I think I counted, I went to 4 different 6th grades, 2 in California, 1 in Indiana, and then 1 in Germany. And so we were very nomadic as a result of my father's military career. But the one thing that kind of cemented how I've lived my life was the 5 children in my family, that we were always the new kids on the block. And so we always stayed together, and you always had that support, that unit. No matter where you were at, I never felt alone. You know, my sister was always in school with me, and my brothers were following. And so that was what really set me on my path, was just having that kind of support system. And then, you know, I wanted a pretty good sized family myself. So my own children would have that experience of always having that support and that backup and someone to be in school with them, and to just know that they could turn to somebody, whether it was their parents or their siblings. And so it was a great experience for me. Got to see a lot of the world, got to see a lot of the United States. When we were in Europe, we traveled a lot, got to go to different countries and experience different things that, again, helped shape my perspective on the world. And just, so it was an amazing experience, amazing childhood that I look back on fondly. And a lot of things, like I said, from the moving to the traveling to the family support, have helped shape me as a father. The lessons my mom taught me, she was a far better parent than I could ever imagine myself being, but I like to think that I instilled some of her lessons into my children. And I have 4 amazing children. I like to say they succeeded in spite of me, because they are 4 individuals that are just successful and amazing. And I look up to them in a lot of ways. So but that's kind of my childhood and how I got to where I am now, I guess.
So are 5 children in your family?
In my own,
Yes,
I have
growing up.
2 sisters growing up. Yes, so there were 5 of us.
And you're the second of 5?
I am the second of
Second
5.
of
Yeah.
5. And was it 2 brothers and 3 sisters, or?
2 and 2. I have two younger brothers,
Okay, got
an older sister, and a younger sister.
The thing that strikes me as so interesting about that, what you just said, Tony, was, you know, you're born in Chicago, and you know, I kind of come from that area. I was born in DeKalb, Illinois, but we moved around equally amounts. My dad was not in the service, but we moved every 2 to 3 years. So 2 grade schools, 2 junior highs, 2 high schools, and 2 colleges. And for me, it was a giant, long life adventure, and I loved everything about it. So I sort of tackle my life in that mode of adventure. And so it feels a little bit like you've done the same. Now, as you know, your other siblings and your children as well, not everybody processes things the same. You know, my older brother, moving was painful, or moving was uncomfortable. And for me, it was a big, wild adventure. So, you know, obviously our personalities and you know, the DNA of who we are sort of dictates some of that. But to me, it's just a tremendous plus for you, the fabric of who you are, to have experienced different cultures, you know, in Europe and the United States and across the United States. You're in California for a while, you said, because you're broaden your horizons, broaden your understanding of humanity and people and compassion. But again, that's something that's probably inbred in you as well. So I identify with what you're saying as far as the travel and moving around, but the certainty of having, you know, a stable family. So that's a tremendous foundation for what you've done. You ended up in Colorado Springs. You said your dad, the military there. And how old were you at that time when you landed in Colorado Springs?
I was 16. Well, I was 15, I guess. I was finishing. What was funny was um, in Germany, where I lived, in Mannheim, high school was grades 7 to 12. And so when I came to the United States in Colorado, I was in the 9th grade, and that was junior high. And I had no idea what a junior high was, because I had been in high school, the 7th grade, the 8th grade, and half of my 9th grade year when we moved here. And I was in a middle, like I said, a junior high. They didn't have a math class for me. I remember still to this day going and sitting in this pod area and no teacher, because they didn't teach at the level of math that I had been taking since I was in high school in Germany. And so it was a very, very interesting experience for me not to have a math teacher, because the junior high didn't teach the math I was taking. And so I graduated high school down there, and then moved up to Fort Collins to attend Colorado State University, and just fell in love with the town. And as much moving as I did, it's as a kid, it's crazy to think that now I've lived my entire adult life in this one city, and raised my family here. But I love it, and it's been great. And so I use my summers and vacations to still do that travel and keep that adventure alive. And but this is home, and it's been home for a long time now.
I love what you just said, because both of us, having moved around a lot in our growing up formative years, that sort of sets the stage a little bit for change. And I've always considered myself a wanderer at heart, but then I found it fascinating that I've been married for 40-some years and had the same job at the family business for 30-some years. So they're contrasting when you think about it. But you went, what year did you move to Fort Collins? Because I know Fort Collins has had a tremendous amount of changes. We lived in Greeley back in the 70s, and I know Fort Collins has grown exponentially. What year did you land there to begin with?
I started up here in 1979, so it's been, aging myself now, it's been, what is that, close to, I don't even know the math now.
79. Wasn't 70s the decade that the Denver, the gas, things were, had dramatically changed economically, I know, in Denver at that time. And so in the last 4 decades, or however many it's been, you've seen tremendous changes in Fort Collins all the way down to Denver, with 25, being 4-lane now, and it's almost a bedroom community in a way. Hewlett Packard is there in Fort Collins, and I'm assuming the college has even thrived and grown. They're so well respected.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing place. It's grown. I can't even, I would exponentially since I've been here, especially in the past 10 years, the growth.
Right.
And, there used to be it felt like distance between Fort Collins and Loveland when I first started here. Right. Like the south edge of Fort Collins seemed so far from the north end of Loveland. And now like we're a community, it feels like.
Yeah, Loveland has grown just ridiculous amounts. Back in the 70s when we lived in Greeley, it was just like a little teeny whistle stop. And now it's a thriving community, and obviously on the way to the Rocky Mountain National Park, so they get a lot of tourism and traffic through there. But very nicely thought out, planned community. Both of those are. Traffic has changed quite a bit, so you've got the whole traffic issue, but all pluses, I think.
Yeah, it's like I said, if you enjoy the seasons, if you enjoy being outdoors, if you're active, this is, for me, it's the perfect place. The foothills and the hikes I take, and getting up to Rocky Mountain National Park, it's basically in our backyard.
Yes,
and
30 minutes away.
It is a when it comes to writing, or when it comes to inspiration, the place where I live is a great source of that. Not only for its beauty, but the chance to get away and find the quiet, the time to think and reflect.
the hiking and the nature and all of those aspects. When you went to Colorado State and you moved up to Fort Collins, did you pursue a career in education? Is that where you started, or did that kind of turn into what was your degree experience?
I came up to CSU not really knowing what it was I wanted to do. I just knew that I was going to go to school. My sister was the first in the family to attend college. Neither one of my parents did. And so I knew that that was a goal they had for their children, was for us to go to college. And then when I came up here, I was going to college. I didn't really know what, but I majored in occupational therapy and got my degree in that, and worked different jobs doing, using that degree. I was an activities coordinator. I was a residential counselor. I did a lot of things that allowed me to use my degree. But I started coaching, and I really enjoyed the coaching. And my younger brother, Mike, had gone to school to be a teacher, and he was coaching and teaching. And I was kind of like, what do I want to do? I had finished college and I'd worked for 5 or 6 years at doing different things. And then I got into coaching, and Mike was just like, you ought to teach. That way you can coach all the time. And so I went back to school. I think like 4 years after I'd completed my degree, I went back to school to get my teaching certification. And I just wanted to coach. It wasn't about the teaching. And because I loved coaching, and anything I could coach, I coached baseball and basketball and softball and volleyball and golf, and I loved it. And it was a priority over my teaching until I had a colleague tell me, hey, knucklehead, you really ought to think about this. And she gave me the movie Mr. Holland's Opus.
Oh, yeah.
And she wrote me a card that said, you're kind of missing the idea by being so lost in your coaching. And I kind of flipped a switch, and I changed the way I looked at teaching and what I was doing, and fell in love with teaching.
Gotcha.
And, I don't think you can do something for 30 years if you don't love it. And coaching was always the path I wanted to pursue, but the more I invested in my classroom, the more I realized the importance of being a teacher and the chance to impact that middle-level child who seemed to be not lost, but a little wayward.
It's formative years. Yeah.
Very formative. And so that's how I got into teaching. It wasn't my first choice. And once I got into it, it still wasn't my first choice. But over the years, it became definitely a love. And
I'm assuming that in your 30 years of teaching, especially at that age bracket, you would surmise that you learned more than you taught. And my guess is, and just relating to that, that preteen or that early teenage, that you went away with the lessons. I mean, obviously they did too. That'll last for a lifetime. But as we grow and change in each relationship, I'm assuming you learn more about yourself, your communication skills, your ability to connect to people soul to soul or heart to heart. So I would be assured that when you retired, which was just a year ago, as I recall, you were grateful for the experience, but you also grew as a human being over the 30 years because of all that relating with other young people.
Oh, without a doubt, I say that about my parenting as well. As much as I tried to teach my children, I learned so many more things about myself and about being a decent human and a good parent. And they taught me. They helped shape me as a teacher as well, because I'd pick their brain about their teachers when they'd come home from school, and they would tell me what teachers did that annoyed them, that upset them, that they enjoyed. And so they helped me in the classroom. And over the 30 years, my relationship with my students changed. And so it made me think differently and work differently with them. When I was first teaching, I was like their big brother. So I had that kind of relationship with a lot of my students, a big brother. And then
how did that change then?
And then as I got older and I had my own children, then I was more like a father figure to my students. And then I decided, now that I'm the grandfather to my students, it might be time for me to retire, because I might be losing a little touch with them, the music and the things like that. I used to, when my kids were at home, and I would know what music they were into, and I would know what television shows and what trends, and I could relate easier to my students, because my children were living that for me and with me. But then as my children grew older and out of the house and everything like that, now, like I said, the music, my son would come and DJ some of the school dances, and he'd play some songs, and it'd be like, I've never heard that. And the kids would be crazy. And so being the grandfather to this last generation of kids that I taught was a little different. And so, like I said, as I've aged and during my career, my relationship with my students changed, just because they viewed me differently. And so differently, I think they needed different things from me. So that's just, it was an evolution without a doubt.
Sure.
For 30
Yeah, and timing is everything. So just sort of gauging when is the right time to do anything is certainly a soul question. So 30 years as an educator. Have you? I'm asking my producer here a minute. Have you taken some background pictures yet? Okay, good. Sorry. I'm orchestrating my producer in the studio here. 30 years as an educator, a father of 4 children. Let's talk a little bit about your writing and authoring books. I'm assuming that came sort of midway through your teaching years, maybe in the last 10 years. I looked up your books on Amazon. And so let's talk a little bit about how those came to be and what it takes, Tony, to risk having your voice on print, in print. What the steps were that you took to go from, setting a title to actually writing all the words in the book to getting it published. I have a certain amount of audience that are interested in obviously putting out children's books or this or that, and they don't know the steps or, and again, you and I talked about this word risk earlier. Talk to me about the inception of your writing. What's the future look like for it, and how you pulled the trigger on that, I think is what I want to know.
Well, it's funny because I always loved writing. When at high school, I loved writing. And then I had a job as the activities coordinator where I would publish a weekly newsletter, and I would try some of my pieces in there, just about my thoughts about life in general. And I was surrounded by senior citizens, and so I would write stories about them. And my writing was always well received. Well, when I went back to school to get my teaching certification, I thought I would make myself a little more marketable, because I was going back in as a PE teacher, a teacher of physical education. But I thought, well, have a minor in something that may make you more marketable. And so I thought, I like reading, I like writing, why not get that English minor? And so I started to take a couple courses, and I took a composition course, and the professor just shredded my work. Like, he was the first person ever to go, this is nonsense. And he was rough. And so after he took his red pen to so many of my pieces of work, I just put my writing away and decided, okay, this is a professional. He's a professional. He knows what he's talking about. And I listened to his voice. And the other people who said, oh my God, you have this gift, or you can write, they weren't professionals. They were just friends or family or whatever. And so I was just like, I put a lot of weight into what he had to say about my writing. And so I just put it away. I stopped writing, and I just let it be something that was, and so then in 2015, I started to journal about my experience of trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon. That was the first year I was attempting to qualify. In the summer of 2014, I made my first attempt, with hopes of getting into the 2015 Boston Marathon. And so I started journaling just the struggles and the triumphs and the challenges. And the more I wrote about and journaled my thoughts and how the runs went and how I was changing and what it was demanding of me, the more I realized I'm not writing about running at all. Running was just an avenue to get my thoughts about this whole journey together. And I joined a running group online, and it was, the goal of the group was to run 2015 miles during the year 2015. So the group was called Run the Year. And I thought, well, this will be inspiring and motivating, and it'll help me keep track of my mileage as I get closer to Boston. And so I just joined it for a motivating kind of factor and to inspire me. And there were so many people in there that I have now call friends and I keep in touch with through the years, and I've met at races, and just amazing people. And the organizers of it, I'm indebted to them for everything they did to help me and to get my book originally published. And so I was in the group, and I wasn't actively participating. I was just following along, and it wasn't as inspiring and as motivating as I wanted it to be, because just people were nitpicking about what counted as mileage and how you get your mileage and all this other stuff. And so finally one day I just put a little message in the board, and I just went, "Psst, want to know a secret?" And I said, "It all counts." And what I meant was, no matter what you're doing, the goal was bigger than running 2015 miles. It was about being healthy. And so whatever you're doing, if you're on the elliptical, if you're riding your bike, if you're walking, if you're jogging, if you're sprinting, if you're running marathons.
If you're moving, yeah.
Exactly. And so all I said was, "Psst, want to know a secret?" Well, it struck
Exploded.
a chord in the group, and the group was 30,000 strong or whatever. And so every day I just started writing, "Want to know a secret?" And it wasn't a secret, it was just thoughts about life in
Musings.
general. Musings. And I started to get a following in this group, and I don't know why. I'm just an ordinary dude.
Don't need to know. Yeah.
And some random thoughts, but it struck a chord with people. And so the more I wrote, the bigger the following became, and the more risk I would take with what I was writing. I'd be a little more vulnerable. I'd be a little more open. I'd be a little more challenging. And so every day it was, want to know a secret, want to know a secret, want to know a secret. Well, over the course of that time, a young man by the name of Benjamin started following me. Well, his mom started following me, and she would read the Benjamin, and Benjamin would respond back through his mom, and his mom would type a comment, say, "Hey, Benjamin says this." And so one day, probably about, I don't know, I had already run Boston, and I had successfully qualified and gone to Boston and made the trip. And now I had this whole new audience and this whole new inspiration to write, because now I had chased down this dream of mine. And so Benjamin came on one day, and he was like, "Mom, why does Mr. Tony say, want to know a secret?" He said, "He doesn't tell secrets, he tells truths." And the very next day I got online and I went, "Want to know a truth?" And
changed
the
it.
people in the group knew why I had changed my little mantra.
Backstory.
And because they had been following and they knew Benjamin. And so from there, it snowballed into people going, "You ought to write a book. You ought to write a book." And I kept saying, "I'm not a writer. I'm just a dude with random thoughts who takes 5 minutes a day and writes his ramblings and musings and poetry and whatever else you want to call it." And then the two gentlemen, Adam Goucher, former Olympian, and Tim Catalano, author and inspiration, they approached me about, "Hey, you ought to think about writing a book." And we sat down and had lunch, and they said, "We encourage you to self-publish and get it out there, because then you own your book and you can do what you want with it, and you can give it away, and you can donate the money to charities, and you can do whatever you want." And so they really, really helped me to make that final push. And then they supported me once the book got published. They put it out there and said, hey, this dude, you know who he is, he's got a book. And they really, the first book took off. When Tim first approached me, he said, Tony, don't be upset if your book sells like over the lifetime, if it sells, 200, 250 books. He said, that's what happens to self-published books. And my first book now, I think the sales it's still modest, but it's well over 5,000 copies sold and still growing. And
that came out in, was it 2016? Is that when that was
2016
published? Yeah. And then you've had two since then, so you've had the courage to go forth and have more musings to talk about.
Right, and the first one, it was funny because I was stuck how I wrote it. I was stuck into this formula for how to write it, and it was always rhyming, and it was always 4 stanzas, and it was always, and the more I wrote, the more I wanted to break free from that, but my audience had become used to that. And so in my second book, I was like, I know what they're used to, but I'm tired of that, and I want to try something different. So my second book, which is called Whispers from My Heart, and it's dedicated to my mom. And that's a funny story too, but it allowed me to get outside of the box I had stuck myself in, and that I kept myself in because of what I thought other people would think.
Yeah.
And
You
once
decided
I
to go with the flow a little bit more.
right,
expand the flow.
Decided that, I think you need to grow in whatever you do, and I was stuck as a writer. And plus, like I said, I didn't view myself as a writer.
And you're still teaching during that time, so you've got a full-time profession. Yeah.
So my second book came out just over a year later, and then it took me a while to write the third book. Had some problems with the publisher, and it's for a while, and now I'm working on book number 4 because I feel like book 2 is probably my favorite. Whispers from My Heart is probably my personal favorite.
Because that was dedicated to your mom. Your second book,
yeah. My third book has some of my favorite pieces in it. It's just different, and it's a different style of book compared to the first 2. Okay. And now I'm working on this 4th one, and I think it's the book that I always wanted to write.
Interesting. Does it have a title yet?
It has a working title, Conversations with My Heart.
Gotcha.
But I don't know if I'm going to stick with that. But it's the book but I have freedom now, and I believe that my message is worth hearing, and I've changed over
confidence.
In the 6 years since I started and published my first book now.
Sure.
The response, the feedback from folks has been overwhelming. I still am surprised by how many people want to share my work on social media and make posters out of it, or they tape mirrors, and it's still overwhelming to me. But finally, I'm at a place where I'm at peace with the things I write, and I write them, certainly
from the heart.
Certainly you want other people to enjoy what you write, but I write it from a place of, I'm putting this out there, and if it gets a like and it gets some love, it's shared, great. But
without controlling the outcome. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Not being tied to or worried about
expectation or anything like that. And much so like making films is it you just you just create is what you do, whatever your gift is in the world, and then you let it go. You put it into the world like you do a child, and then it has its own journey. And you're just following behind it at that point, and you're like, oh my God, my name's actually on that. I can't believe that I accomplished that. But that's how you build a life, decade by decade. For those of us that are creators. So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I still mute myself a little bit in that regard. I am fascinated by writing, and I read. And part of the journey of making these books is I use other people's quotes. So I'll write a piece, and then I try to add somebody else's quote as an introduction for what I wrote. So I always write my piece first, and then
attach a quote to it.
That's the hardest part about the book. But then I get lost in these quotes because these people write these things, and I go, oh, wow, I wish I could write like that.
Interesting.
So it's funny because I still marvel at, and sometimes it takes me, I read 80 to 100 quotes to pick out the
I know it.
one.
I know it. Because there's so many good
You know,
ones. I know
there's
it.
so many.
It's like, which one resonates with me 100% that this has got to be the one.
Exactly.
I
And
know
then,
it.
like I said, I wish I could say that quote, or I hope I remember that for a
I
later
know it.
piece.
I know it. Yeah,
Because I'm fascinated by other creators and
of
artists,
course. Yeah.
and I always want to say, can I get to that level, and how can I improve in anything I do?
Of
And I think
course.
that's even at my age right now, I always look at, am I still advancing? Am I still improving?
Hmm.
in
I
areas?
don't know how you could not, as long as we're in physical form like we are. You know, the lessons are everywhere, and whether or not we're noticing them is another story, but we are here to learn, you
Yeah.
know, and we get to pick and choose what that is, but that's our privilege to be able to do that. You know, you are an amazing human. You know, I think that about you to begin with. And you're a really easy interview for me to do. I could probably talk 3 hours straight with you. I want to change the subject just a little bit. I actually wanted to talk more about your publishing, and maybe we can talk about that offline. But let's talk about the word kind. The My Power of One brand that I started in 2014 was about the impact of one word. And because I'm efficient and simple in the way that I express things. So I've got a brand now, mypowerof1.com, that's got one impact word. And the word kind is what we're sort of making this podcast about, you know, the Wizard of One, the magical journey of kindness. And I wanted to ask you, Tony, to describe to me or define what kind means to you. Give me your heartbeat on that. Because it's a powerful word. It's a big, powerful word. So, talk to me a little bit about how you would describe kindness or the word kind to a complete stranger, maybe.
That's interesting, because I saw something on your Power of One page the other day that it's kindness is not an act, it's a reflection of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that we get lost in, well, what can I do that's kind, or what random act of kindness can I do today? And people get hung up on that. And I think that, like you said, kind goes beyond that. Kind is a way of operating.
Mm-hmm.
It's
A way of being in the world.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the way you approach how you are going to greet others.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way you approach and how you are going to complete your task. It's a way of doing business, although I don't like the word business necessarily, but I love that line. It's a reflection of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
We look at all these characteristics, such as, the one word bravery, or
Mm-hmm.
committed, or things like
Risk.
that.
Yeah.
But I think that at the heart of any of those things is this genuine sense of caring
Mm-hmm.
about others.
Mm-hmm. And yourself.
Yeah, well,
Starting with yourself. Yeah.
I mean, you have to be kind to yourself. But I think if I had to express it to somebody who didn't understand the idea of kindness, it would be just that it is this genuine regard for the well-being of yourself and of others.
And humanity, the bigger
right,
picture. Yeah.
What can I do, or how can I present myself in a way that offers that genuine regard to others?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the acts that you do, like holding the door, or letting
Right.
someone through the line first, or greeting someone warmly. Those are all ways of being kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important, and I think sometimes it's lost. We are in this race, and we are moving at Mach speed, and the pleasantries and the humanity gets shoved aside a little bit, because you got to go. And I don't think I have time to hold the door for 4 people, or I don't think I have time to let somebody go in front of me in the grocery line, and I think we're mistaken. I think that when we back to just that genuine regard for other people, that it just changes. If it doesn't change them, it changes me.
Right. Which is the goal, really, in a way, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Just
so
the greater good of humanity, and just being a piece of that, and knowing that we matter. And we matter to, strangers. We matter to people we're in relationship with. And But self-care is a good start, really, really caring about your own journey and the lessons that you learn. I want to, before we wrap up our time together today, it's important for me to talk about Boston. You mentioned the word race in there just a little bit ago, and I've run 3 marathons. So I didn't run my first one until I was in my upper 40s. But I am a runner at heart, and you are just training for your 8th Boston Marathon, which is, just mind blowing. And I believe you've run, is it 30 or 40 marathons at this point? And besides that, you're 60 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is
Okay.
correct.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the why, the how, the longevity of having that on your physicality. Just talk to me about training and sustaining and powering through. And gosh, it's a big conversation itself, but I got to hear about your Boston training.
Well, it's funny because I never wanted to run a marathon, and my brother John, who I'd run several half marathons with, we would make it a getaway weekend, and we'd go to places where we could golf and then run a half marathon and then golf some more. And one year we had run the Arizona half marathon for probably 5 or 6 or 7 years in a row, and he said, what we ought to run the marathon. And I was like, you are crazy. And I got to the finish line of a half marathon, and somebody told me to run back to the start line.
Start all over. Yeah.
Things would just go crazy. But he talked me into it. And to this day, I owe him a debt of gratitude because it started me on my Boston journey. So I ran my first full marathon when I was 50. And I didn't follow the Boston Marathon, didn't know that much about it, but I had a friend who was running it in 2013.
Okay.
And I had run 3 full marathons, but Boston wasn't in my eyesight. It wasn't in my, I want to do that. And my friend was running, and she crossed the finish line and was walking back to her hotel, and she called me. And we were talking about the marathon, and the bombs went off. And she said, Tony, TV, something's going on. There's ambulances and sirens, and people are saying there was a bomb. And I turned on the TV, and there was nothing at the time because it had just happened. And then like 5 minutes later, the news came on, and as I watched it and followed the story of the people that lost their lives and followed the manhunt. It was
in 2013, as I remember.
2013, right. I was sitting at home, and I told myself, I don't know, something resonated with me about the city coming back and Boston strong and the millions of the people that were injured. And I said, I need to run that race. And so I didn't even know what it took to qualify. And when I found out what the qualifying time was, I was nowhere even close to being able to qualify for it. And so I decided, okay, when I get healthy, because I was injured at the time, and I was like, when I get healthy, I'm going to train to try and qualify for the Boston Marathon. So that was the spring of 2013. I spent the next entire year training. And in summer of 2014, I went and ran a marathon to try and qualify. And I ran a qualifying time, but it wasn't going to be fast enough. And so I went, and 4 weeks later found another marathon, and I failed miserably to qualify. I got lost on the course. I hit the wall at mile 17. And I came home, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And then my son, he called me up and said, Dad, let me train you. And I was like, he's a CrossFit. He owns his own CrossFit gym and coach. And he said, let me train you. And I said, Ryan, your dad doesn't do CrossFit. I don't throw heavy weights around. I run. He's like, Dad, trust me, I don't want to make you a CrossFitter. I want to make you a better
Get your
he
core.
Said, he said, do you have another race in mind? And I said, there's one more, my last gasp effort to get into Boston. And I said, it's 6 weeks away. And he goes, I'd really like 3 months, but I'll take 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And for 6 weeks, man,
Yeah. But you did
he
it.
put me through the grinder,
Yeah.
and I ran a qualifying time and went to Boston, and then I just now for the past 6 years have trained. Past 7 years now, I've trained with my son. He's my coach,
Mm-hmm.
and he has made me a better runner to his promise. And it's hard. It's a difficult process. We had to change things up. In 2017, I ran a terrible race and trying to qualify for Boston, and I came home just beat up. And I went to my son. I said, "Hey, Rhino," I said, maybe I'm at that age where I'm just starting to slow down. I've been racing for 7 years now, and running marathons for 7 years. And I said, maybe it's just like, it's time to look. Dad, I said, because at some point, diminishing returns, I'm getting closer to 60. And he said, I think you're there yet. He said, you accomplish a lot just because you're stubborn.
Yeah.
And he said, maybe you need to rethink your
psychology.
training,
Yeah.
everything you're doing. And he was right. And so we revamped my training with him. I would go to the gym 2 times a day. I'd go in the morning and I'd go in the evening, and we'd do extra credit. And I changed my running plan to a 20-week running plan from a 12-week plan. And I just pushed myself to a space and a place where I'd never been before physically. And now I'm more fit and faster than I've ever been, faster than I was 10 years ago, which to me is mind blowing, but it's a compliment to my son and his coaching.
And you're able to receive it and set the goals and stand up to it and all that. We've got about 10 minutes left, and there's a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, I'm going to put into the brand on your behalf the word risk. And you told me your favorite color is blue, so the logo is going to be blue, and I'll probably have that in the brand in the next couple of days. But that'll be in honor of you. And most of our words that we put into the brand have a backstory and have somebody we've co-created it with. One of the things I want to do with you before we get off our recording is co-create an act of kindness together. Because we can. And so let's talk a little bit of, we've got 10 minutes, so we've got sort of a time crunch, but let's talk about what we could offer our audience, considering our life experiences. You're 60, I'm 67 now, and we both have had, late in our years, great accomplishments and so longevity and perseverance and all those kinds of things. But what could we offer our audience as something that's doable within humanity or in the scope of their day-to-day, considering all stages of their career? Give some thought, Tony, to us co-creating an act of kindness that we can offer our audience who's listening today.
That's a good one, because when you asked me to define kindness, and I said it's not just an act, it's a reflection of your soul. So it's hard, but I would say this, Sue, that start with the children.
Love that.
Whatever you want to do, in a way of making an impact, start with children so they understand and they can start to see for themselves that people care. Because our kids right now are lost in headlines that are negative, and they're lost in headlines that are violent, and they're lost in headlines that are just dark. And
when you're talking about kids, what age bracket are you envisioning?
I'm talking about all kids. I don't think there is a
young people.
And again, it's based on the resources of your audience and where they're at. It's going and helping serve meals, to children, and
spending time.
It's volunteering your time,
listening,
to do things so that kids know that there are people that genuinely care and are willing to invest their time, are willing to invest patience, that are willing to say, I believe in you. kids want to be heard, and they will seek attention in so many different ways. And that's why I started my, kindness challenge with the whole TikTok thing, that kids will do anything for attention. And this TikTok thing was ugly and it was violent but kids were doing it because the attention they garnered from it. And so
it's a techie tech world. We didn't grow up in that, so it's a whole different environment. One last thing before I just got to hit one last thing, I want to kind of wrap, but I want to talk about your mom before we get off. I just think that's a topic we cannot not discuss because you lost your mom in the last year, and I lost my mom in the last year too. Tony, talk to me just. And what do we got? About 5 minutes? I think we're but yeah, I want to be sure we get some wisdom of moms into this conversation for one, and also let us know how people can get a hold of you if they need to. Is there a landing page for you? I know you're on social media. Your books are on Amazon. I don't know if they're on other platforms. So talk to me a little bit about mom's wisdom, the value of mom in your 60 years, and then where people can then find you.
Yeah,
big topic, I know.
It is, and it's a tough topic still. We did a celebration of her life last summer, and I was one of the last speakers, and I thought I'm the man who always can find the words no matter what. I pride myself on finding the right words, and the words were difficult to express. But Mom was my rock, and her loss was hard, and it made me over this past year and a half look at my life and how I wanted to live out the rest of my life. And so I continue to be grateful and blessed that she was my mom, because she made an impact. And so I know that with the time, whatever time I have left, that I would like to follow in her footsteps. And, she was not an author. She was not a teacher. She was not a
marathon runner. Yeah, right.
But
she was a mom.
She instilled this grit and fire and passion, and she was feisty, and she was strong-willed, but at the base of everything, she was love. And
she was the definition of love. She gave you life, but she also
I equate love and kindness so closely together that kindness is acting out of love, and that was my mom, and I miss her every day, and so I try to hold firm to the belief that I'm living a life that would make her proud.
Gotcha.
And
how lucky are you? Not everybody gets that relationship in a lifetime. Yeah,
I'm blessed.
Yeah.
And
how can people get a hold of you if they need to find your books, find you, find your wisdom, your musings?
My books are all available through Amazon and independent bookstores. Like so, Want to Know a Truth is my first one. Whispers from My Heart is my second one, and then Secrets, Truths and Whispers is my final one. They're all on major, like I said, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But they're also independent bookstores online, and
that'd be downloaded, I suppose, on some of the apps.
They're available. They are. They're not audio books. I get grief for not having audio. Self-publishing is a challenge in and of itself, and for the fact that I have books out there, I'm very proud.
I've done it. I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also, I'm on Facebook, my G-Force page, and on Instagram. I'm easy to find. But if people on Facebook or find any information about me or whatever, I'm pretty easy to reach.
You haven't manifested a website yet?
No, I'm working on that. Now that I'm retired, it was funny because I talked to my brother about all these things I want to do, like podcasts and all these other things, websites. He was like, you got to give up the day job. And I was like, I know. And so I gave up the day job, but that's next. That is, we're going to go down that path. And
the podcasts are a blast, by the way. I mean, you're obviously my second one, but I love the learning piece to it. And, you start out not knowing what to do next, but that's what I love about it. And they're actually a blast because you get to pick your guests. And, and so you sort of handpick, different people and different topics and stuff. Let me check on our time. Huh? Oh yeah, gotcha. Oh well, we just a few minutes from our hour. All right, so I'm gonna start by thanking Tony Garcia from Fort Collins, Colorado, for his podcast interview today. And as I said, you were, other than my first podcast, you were my first ask. Absolute privilege to be with you on Zoom today. And the next time I'm in Loveland, we are going to look each other up, and this is what we're going to do together. We're going to go have ice cream together.
Yeah.
But and I want to remind our audience, Tony, that our kind products on our website, mypowerofone.com, are available for the universe, for the humanity to order and have, and have a reminder that we matter to others, and you and I have co-created an act of kindness to connect with children and to get in relationship and let them know that we care and support them. You are, in my opinion, and I've had an extraordinary life as well, but Tony, you are a marvel. And I know you've heard lots of compliments in you over the years, and you and I have been connected now for a couple of years, maybe on social media. But I think we're very alike souls, and that's why we are here today. I am Sue Vicory. I'm the host of The Wizard of One and podcast that will be on all the podcast platforms, probably starting next week. It'll probably take me a week to get it figured out and put up there, but we'll put the links up on social media, and it's been my absolute honor to be in your space. Let me see your T-shirt. You're wearing Superman.
No,
Okay.
Superman.
You wear that.
I hadn't done laundry in all of my.
You wear that one a lot. You wear that one a lot. Yeah.
I need to find the Power of One shirts today. Because
I'm gonna send. Yeah, I gotta send Joy a Joy shirt for sure. And then once the wrist shirts come out, I will surprise you with a wrist shirt, and I'll want to see you wearing that. Because as I go through your social media, I see Unstoppable and some of the shirts that you have. Believe shirt was one that you got first on. But any closing comments for you at all?
Just thank you. I am truly grateful and honored that you chose me to be here. And I hope that folks are able to take something away from our time together. And like I said, it has truly been a privilege. I'm truly, truly grateful. Thank you so much, Sue, for everything you've done for me.
Absolute honor. My second only guest on The Wizard of One, and our new word, risk, is going to be forever immortalized because of you. And again, thank you for your time. You're tech-wise, you figured it out. We got the audio going all right, and we're both impressed with ourselves. So the good news is, at any decade of your life, you can start something brand new and get it done. And the sky's the limit for everybody, but people like you and I. So thank you. I adore you. You know that, and we will be in touch.
Okay, I look forward to the ice cream.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.